What is going on, internet world? My name is Tommy. You probably know me as Rivet, and I'm your coach of the Atlanta Braviaries, the highest flying fly-sticking team on YouTube. And we are here today with our draft analysis and breakdown for the PCC, the Pokemon Championship Circuit, Sapphire Division. This is going to be a fantastic season. Welcome to the workshop. Alrighty guys, we are here breaking down our draft for the PCC Sapphire Division. This is one of my favorite leagues. I've been in this for 3 seasons now, and it's got some of my favorite people in it. We've got a fantastic admin team to work with, a bunch of great battlers, and this is shaping up to be one of the best seasons yet. That's the Atlanta Braviaries, rather, are the 2-time defending PCC Red League champs, which was the previous highly competitive division, but there was a little bit of reshaping. So we are now in the Sapphire Division, but we are looking to bring our championship reign over to Sapphire. But this is going to be an incredibly tough season. There's some phenomenal battlers in this league, some of whom have been featured on the channel before, some of whom will be featured for the very first time, which I'm incredibly excited about. So we have a fantastic schedule this season, some great battles. So this is a season to watch out for. If I would implore you to watch any of these channels or any of these leagues on this channel, this is one to watch out for. But with all that rambling out of the way, let's jump into the team draft analysis and breakdown. But before we jump into the breakdown of the actual team, I'm just going to give you a little bit of background on this league. So this league's a little bit different than some of the other ones that have been featured on this channel. This is a tier-based draft, and it's a little bit different. There are 6 tiers. There's A and then S through E. You take 1 S tier and then 2 from each of the other tiers, so you end up with a team of 11 Pokemon. And just having a tier-based system makes it a little bit easier to try to finagle the system a little bit and get some really good stuff. So going into this, I had the 11th pick in the draft, which is definitely not what I wanted, definitely less than ideal. I was probably going to have to settle for a little less stellar first-round pick. I was seeing a lot of S tiers going early on, so I wanted to see maybe if a good one could follow me, maybe I would take my S tier. But there were some very, very good things in A tier, I thought. Necrozma was there, which was really solid. Volcarona was there. Urshifu Rapid Strike caught my attention. But when it came to my turn, there was still 1 S tier that was sitting there that I didn't think had any place sitting there for that long. So with the first pick of my draft, I decided to go with TORNADUS-THERIAN. TORNADUS-THERIAN is an incredible pick, especially for the first pick in the draft. A pure flying type with the Regenerator ability. It's just so versatile, so strong, and an amazing piece to build a team around. 121 beast speed. It gives it incredible form of speed control. It can run a variety of offensive sets really well, and it forces my opponent to bring various prep each week, either a Scarfer to outspeed it, to try to slow it down with something else. So it's just an incredible offensive beast. With a base 110 special attack, it's able to run a variety of sets incredibly easily. It can run especially offensive sets, stuff like Hurricane, Heat Wave, Focus Blast, Psychic, Sludge Wave, Dark Pulse. It can Nasty Plot Up, which is also incredibly scary. You just smash stuff. It also has very respectable physical attack at base 100, letting it run moves like Acrobatics, Knockoff, Crunch, Superpower. It can U-turn out for momentum. The Regenerator ability just lets it have so much versatility and run defensive sets very well, as it does have pretty respectable natural bulk at 79, 80, and 90 in its defenses and HP. So it can definitely run stuff like Assault Vest incredibly easily with 4 attacks and then like Hurricane, Heat Wave, Knockoff, U-turn. That's incredibly viable. It can run Rocky Helmet as well to punish physical attackers, and then switch out Regenerator its HP back. It can run Choice Specs, Choice Scarf. It can run Heavy Duty Boots. It's a great defogger as well. So Torn is just an amazing piece to build around. I'm honestly shocked I got it so late in the draft, and it just gives me a great piece to continue drafting. So with my second pick, I definitely wanted to grab something to complement Torn. Maybe grab grab something that shut down its weaknesses a little bit. So with the second pick of my draft, I decided to go with FERROTHORN. FERROTHORN is a Pokemon that I like drafting. Although I put it in a lot of plans and I almost never get it because I try to wait for like the 3rd round and it always gets taken. So I'm not messing around. I'm not messing around this time. I decided to take FERROTHORN with the second pick. FERROTHORN was one of the strongest A tiers in my opinion. This thing is an incredible wall. A Grass and Steel type with the Iron Barbs ability. It's a fantastic defensive piece that just gives so much for any team. It's a phenomenal Stealth Rocker and Spiker. It can Leech Seed to get recovery back. It can knock off for utility. It can also Thunder Wave to slow stuff down. Even though it is so defensive, it does have very respectable attack at base 94 and solid stab moves in Gyro Ball and Power Whip. It can Body Press as well, which is pretty spooky. It can Iron Defense and Curse as well, so you can run a little bit of shenanigans in how I play FERROTHORN. It does have that big fire weakness, obviously, which is something I'll be looking to patch up later in the draft. But FERROTHORN is a really good complement to TORNADUS-THERIAN. It gives me a nice defensive piece that Torn enjoys. I can pivot into it and just play a little bit around. and it also just absorbs those rock and electric type moves that Torn definitely doesn't want to take on. It just has such a phenomenal defensive typing. You know, Torn can take on those fighting type moves that FERROTHORN doesn't really love. So I'm really liking those two together. It's a really solid start to the draft. I have, you know, a very offensive and fast piece and a more defensive and slow piece. So moving into my next pick, I definitely wanted to lock in my fairy type. I had a couple different fairies that I was looking at, but you know, to complement FERROTHORN's bulk, I wanted a little bit more of a specially defensive piece, and I wanted something that could wish into FERROTHORN, just because Leech Seed is a pretty decent option for recovery. But if I'm running Rocky Helmet, that I won't be getting that much HP back, and I like the option of being able to give FERROTHORN a little bit more longevity. So with my third pick, I went with SYLVEON. SYLVEON is an incredible fairy. It's incredibly bulky with some very strong offenses as well. At 95 HP and 130 special defense, this thing is an absolutely phenomenal special wall. It's an amazing wish passer with that big HP stat. It's also a very solid cleric with Heal Bell. You can run Calm Mindsets very effectively as well. You know, something like Moonblast or Hyper Voice with Pixelate. Calm Mind, Wish Protect is a very scary set. It also gets very solid offensive options as well with stuff like Psychic and Mystical Fire as well. So this thing isn't just a one-trick pony of wish passing around. It can be very non-passive. Choice Spec sets are pretty easy to run as well. And something it is pretty slow, but that base 110 special attack is nothing to watch out for, with a very solid stab move and Pixelate Hyper Voice, and then just solid coverage as well. It pairs really well with FERROTHORN. Obviously, those two love each other. Just being able to wish into it, providing hazard support for SYLVEON is also very solid, and then their typings just work very solid as well. So I'm really enjoying this pairing so far. I'm really liking the start that I've got. Obviously, I still have to lock down my Dragon type, but I'm really enjoying the start of my Fairy Dragon Steel Core. And on that note, going into my fourth pick, I wanted to move a little bit further towards my Fire Water Grass Core. This is a pick that I had planned from the start, just because this is a hill I die on that this next mon is kind of busted in draft. I always get laughed at for it, but I am adamant that STARMIE is an absolute beast. I love STARMIE. STARMIE's an incredible mon for me. It's a water and psychic type with two fantastic abilities in Natural Cure and Intimidate, and a variety of different things that it can do. It's kind of like Tornadus, where it's very fast at base 115 speed, and it's got decent offensive options at base 100 special attack, but the variety is where, and the versatility is where STARMIE really comes into its own. This thing, with just Life Orb with choice specs, it's an absolutely amazing wall breaker thanks to the analytic ability and just its insane coverage move pool. Hydro Pump and Psychic is a very solid dual stab, and it gets every coverage move under the sun essentially. It gets Thunderbolt, Ice Beam, it gets Meteor Beam now, which is a pretty cool option as well. It gets Power Gem, Flash Cannon, a bunch of other good moves. It can pivot with both Teleport and Flip Turn. It can rapid spin hazards away. It gets recovery and recover, which is really solid. It can absorb status with Natural Cure and bounce out. It can just run so many sets so well. It can run Assault Vest with pivoting and rapid spin. It can run Choice Specs. It can run Choice Scarf. It can just do so many things. And I'm really excited for STARMIE. It pairs very nicely with FERROTHORN. Those typings really complement it well. I was considering something like Slowking, but I think STARMIE in B tier as opposed to Slowking in A tier was just way better value. Gives me another great offensive option, another pivot to get into something like SYLVEON, try to toss off wishes in the Pharaoh as well. And it just does everything for my team. You have to prep hard for STARMIE, just because, you know, if it gets one Meteor Beam off and a rapid spin, it can just kind of clock your team in the late game, and it just gets so much. STARMIE is so good, and I'm really excited to use it. I haven't used it for in a good long while, but when I did use it, I absolutely loved it. So I definitely have high hopes for STARMIE this season. This is going to be one where I'm hoping it'll make it to the kill leaderboards. Moving into my next pick, I definitely wanted to continue the train of core building. I wanted to try to finish off my my Fairy Dragon Steel Core, and I had my eye on another mon. It was pretty solid for me in C tier. It's a mon I haven't used before, but I'm pretty excited for it. So moving next, I've grabbed Flygon. Flygon is a really cool Pokemon, a dragon and ground type with the Levitate ability, and very solid stats across the board. It has 100 in both attack and speed, and 80 in everything else, making it a very respectable offensive threat as well as a defensive piece. I had no idea how versatile Flygon was before I looked into drafting it, but this thing's move pool is actually kind of cracked out. Obviously, it just gets standard stuff like Dragon Dance sets with Outrage, Scale Shot, Earthquake. It gets Fire Blast as well. But this thing gets a whole bunch of other stuff. It can Roost for longevity, it can defog hazards away, it can U-turn to pivot. It gets a pretty solid special move pool as well. Stuff like Draco Meteor, Earth Power, Fire Blast, as I said. It gets Boom Burst. It gets priority with First Impression, which is kind of wild. It can do a whole bunch of stuff. So I'm really excited for Flygon. I have pretty high hopes for it. Giving me another ground immunity. I'm at a very solid Edgequake switch in to help out Torn is also super solid. It's just a really solid defensive piece with stuff like Roost and U-turn. So I'm really liking Flygon. It can obviously do a whole bunch of damage, and just like Starmie and Torn, it's an incredibly versatile threat that you have to prep for. If you're expecting like offensive Flygon, I just come in with some like sub-roosting set, and I can do a whole bunch of stuff. I'll be really happy. So definitely excited to use Flygon this season. I think it'll do very well for the team. And then moving into my next pick, I wanted to finish off my Fire Water Grass Core. I still didn't have my second A tier yet, and there was another mon in there that he seemed a little bit silly, and I absolutely love this. So with my next pick, I took BLACEPHALON. Disco Daddio. Disco Daddio is obviously a key piece to our ISL team, and he's going to be making a fabulous return. Obviously, BLACEPHALON is a fire and ghost type, an incredibly strong special attacker with base 151 special attack and 107 speed. With the Beast Boost ability, it lets him steamroll incredibly easily in the late game, either with choice Scarf sets or choice Spec sets. It can run heavy duty boots with stuff like Calm Mind as well. It can sub, it can trick, and just Fire Blast plus Shadow Ball coming off of that massive 151 special attack is so hard to switch into. Gets solid coverage as well with something like Psyshock, letting it hit through Assault Vest mons, which is pretty solid. And then it does have 127 base attack, which is nothing to sneeze at. Its move pool isn't the greatest, but if I can run something like Choice Band with something like Shadow Claw, Fire Punch, maybe Flame Charge to boost up, and maybe something like Rock Blast as well, that could be pretty spooky. So you definitely don't sleep on on physical BLACEPHALON, because it could do some pretty solid work. So I'm definitely excited to be using Disco Daddio again this season. I think it complements my other offensive threats incredibly well. It just provides, an offensive presence that really helps some of my other versatile mons like Starmie or Flygon or Torn. I can definitely run those a little bit more defensively if I have just Disco Daddio ready to smash stuff in the back. So I'm very excited about him, and I think he'll fit the team very nicely. Moving into my next pick, I wanted something more defensive, so I went with HITMONTOP, another member of the ISL team coming back. HITMONTOP KYAHL, he's an absolute champ. I love HITMONTOP. Another mon that's just so incredibly versatile. An amazing offensive attacker and a very reliable defensive piece as well. Base 95 attack in conjunction with Technician gives it a very solid move pool. Close combats hit very hard. Technicians, triple axles hit very hard as well. And it gets a plethora of priority moves boosted off Technician as well with Fake Out, Bullet Punch, and Mach Punch. Get some other solid attacking moves as well, such as Earthquake and Poison Jab. You can also run Intimidate to make it a very solid physical switch-in with something like Rocky Helmet that's really nice. It's also a very solid rapid spinner, so it can come in, take a move, get those hazards out of there, and put on a bunch of pressure with something like a close combat. So definitely excited to use HITMONTOP again this season. I'm definitely liking the removal options that it's giving me, so I don't have to run something like Rapid Spin or Defog on Starmie or Tornadus respectively. So I can just have KYAHL on the back, get those hazards out of there, and let those two just be threatening offensive pieces. So I'm definitely excited to use KYAHL again. Moving into my next pick, I decided to go in E tier. This was kind of a steal for me, so I took EELEKTROSS. ZYGLROX. I'm using Electric in the OMDL right now, and Ziggy's doing a phenomenal job, so I'm going with his badass older brother over here. EELEKTROSS is an amazing Pokemon, a pure electric type with the Levitate ability, essentially giving it no weaknesses, and this thing is an absolute menace. It's got 115 attack and 105 special attack, along with some very respectable natural bulk, makes this thing an absolutely phenomenal Assault Vest user. It's a great slow pivot with Volt Switch, and it has an absolutely fantastic move pool with stuff like Thunderbolt, Wild Charge, Volt Switch, as I said, Knockoff, Flamethrower, Giga Drain, Aqua Tail. It can crunch, it can coil up with non-Assault Vest sets and put on a bunch of pressure. So it's just an absolutely phenomenal Pokemon. It can invest in either defenses, and just giving me that big, nice bird switch in on either side is super clutch. So I don't have to run something that's like an incredibly fully specially invested FERROTHORN or SYLVEON or something to try to take on Hurricane spam. So I'm really liking EELEKTROSS. I'm very stoked that I was able to grab it in E tier because it was kind of a steal for me. And so after I grabbed EELEKTROSS, this is where my draft kind of started to fall apart. I had a pretty solid plan that I liked, but it relied on me grabbing Miltank with my next pick, and Miltank got taken. So unfortunately, the draft didn't exactly go where I wanted from here. But I still think we ended up with a pretty solid squad. So instead of Miltank with my next pick, I grabbed AUDINO in E tier. Again, this was a pick that was pretty solid for me. AUDINO is a very respectable pick in E tier in my opinion. A pure normal type with the Regenerator ability and pretty solid natural bulk at 103 HP, 86 in both defenses, and a very solid Wish Passing and Clerical ability. This relieves some pressure from SYLVEON. So if I want to run offensive SYLVEON, I can totally just run Wish Passing and Clerical AUDINO. This also gives me a little Regenerator core between this and TORNADUS-THERIAN. Not the greatest synergy in the world, but this thing Tornadus can take on the fighting type moves that AUDINO doesn't super love. This also gives me just a general Shadow Ball switch in for something like Starmie, as it doesn't want to be taking those Shadow Balls. And it's just another good option to try to heal up their FERROTHORN, and it's just a solid utility mon. It does get a very solid move pool in conjunction with Calm Mind, so that could be an option I run. But in E tier, I just needed a normal type. I wanted another wishing option, and this was a pretty solid replacement for Miltank in my opinion. So I'm pretty excited to use AUDINO. I've used it once before. I have also used the Mega Form, so I think AUDINO will fit this team pretty nicely. moving into my next pick, I didn't have a grounded poison yet. I also didn't have a dark type, which was the main caveat and how I could get this team to fit together. I had one more C tier pick, so with my next pick, I decided to grab Drapion. I've never used Drapion before. It's pretty cool. I'm pretty excited for it. It's a poison and dark type with the battle armor and sniper abilities. And again, a lot of versatility in what it can do. It's got 90 attack and 95 speed, along with access to Swords Dance, which makes it a pretty reliable offensive attacker. It's got a solid coverage move pool and dual stab and knockoff and poison jab. It also gets the elemental fangs, earthquake. It can run cheesy sniper sets with cross poison as well. It's also a very respectable defensive piece with 110 defense and access to toxic spikes. So this is one of the things I love about dark types such as Drapion. I love Crocodile for this reason, but it's a very versatile dark type in how it can run. It can either run offensive sets or defensive sets. Just giving me that option is something that I really enjoy for a dark type. So I'm really hoping Drapion can do some good work. I really like the toxic spikes option for something like Tornadus and that STARMIE. So I'm really hoping that SNIPPET over here can do some good work. I'm pretty excited to use Drapion. And then last but not least, I had one more D tier pick. There was really nothing I wanted or needed. So I just decided to grab him on that. I thought it was pretty cool. I thought it was a little bit of a steal in D tier. And it does double one of my types since I literally just grabbed a poison. But for my last pick of the draft, I decided to go with Venomoth. Venomoth is a really cool Pokemon. It's slept on really hard a lot of the time, but this thing is an absolute premier threat. It's an absolutely amazing Quiver Dance threat, thanks to its access to Tinted Lens, which boosts up not very effective moves by 50%. So there's essentially no walls to this. You can just run Bug Buzz on this and just start thrashing some teams. It does also get access to Sleep Powder, I'm pretty sure, so it can provide some good setup opportunities for itself. And in the late game, this thing can just start mashing Bug Buzzes and Sludge Bombs and just wreck some absolute havoc. So I'm really excited for this. This also gives me another pivot if I don't want to run Quiver Dance. I believe it also gets Toxic Spikes as well. So if I don't want to run T-Spikes on Drapion, but I really want them, I can bring those on Venomoth. But, you know, Venomoth is a pretty cool threat. You have to prepare for it. If you get swept by Venomoth in the late game just because you didn't prepare for it, that's a pretty sorry way to go out. So really liking Venomoth for this team, and I'm hoping I can get it to do some good work at least once or twice. But that is the team that we are rocking with for this season. I'm pretty stoked on how this turned out, even though there was a little bit of a rocky road in there. But I'm pretty stoked on how this turned out. I think it's going to be really solid. This is a tough team to prep for. Regenerator plus Double Wish into Ferrothorn, and just dealing with Torn T and Flygon and BLACEPHALON and STARMIE. It's a tough task to break this down. This is a pretty balanced team, and I'm really liking the double Toxic Spikes option as well, just to help Tornadus, you know, wreak havoc. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please be sure to leave a like down below if you enjoyed it. Please be sure to send me a comment telling me what you think of the team, if there's anything I should change, who your favorite mon is, or who you think the kill leader is going to be. We have an absolutely tough road ahead of us. We've got some tremendous battlers in this league. Starting week 1 against Coach Matt O'Maddock. We've played once before, and that was a very solid game. So I'm very excited for this season to kick off. We also do have various other leagues that are going on and wrapping up. SDF and NPBA are currently winding down. We've got the OMDL going strong as well. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. We've got tons of Pokemon content coming up for you guys. So thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.